Every story we tell is a journey, a thrilling adventure that will keep you hooked from start to finish. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing our community come together from all around the world. And don't forget, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Tomorrow, we have a special story just for you. Trust us, you won't want to miss it. See you on the next adventure. He thought the guard would just stand there. He was dead wrong. The evening sun cast long shadows across Buckingham Palace, its golden rays reflecting off the polished boots of Staff Sergeant Daniel Matthews. A 32-year-old former U.S. Marine, Daniel now stood as a royal guard, his posture perfect, his uniform crisp. At 6 feet 2 inches, his presence was commanding, silent, unwavering, and built from years of military service. He had been trained to withstand pressure, to maintain discipline under any circumstance, and to uphold the traditions of the guards before him. The last groups of tourists trickled out of the courtyard, their cameras full of pictures, their voices hushed in awe at the grandeur of the palace. But as the calm of the evening settled, a different kind of visitor arrived. Travis Miller, a 34-year-old construction worker from Texas, stumbled through the iron gates, his t-shirt damp with sweat and beer. His boots scuffed against the stone pathway as he weaved unsteadily, his bloodshot eyes scanning the courtyard. The smell of cheap whiskey and cigarettes clung to him like a second skin. He had spent the day at a rowdy pub, watching his favorite football team lose, and now, fueled by frustration and far too many drinks, he had found himself here, face to face with a silent, unflinching soldier in a bright red coat and tall bearskin hat. Travis chuckled to himself, his slurred laughter breaking the peaceful silence. He wobbled forward, stopping just a few feet from Daniel. "Well, would you look at this," he said, his Texas drawl thickened by alcohol. A real-life toy soldier. A few remaining tourists cast nervous glances, sensing trouble. Some whispered among themselves, a few quietly moved away, but others stayed, drawn to the tension like moths to a flame. Travis tilted his head, examining Daniel from head to toe. "Bet you think you're something special, huh?" he muttered, his voice laced with drunken confidence. "All dressed up like a damn Christmas ornament." Daniel remained motionless. His grip on his ceremonial rifle was steady, his eyes fixed forward. He had been through worse, combat missions in Iraq, military drills under extreme pressure, moments where life and death hung in the balance. This was just another night on duty. But Travis wasn't done yet. He smirked, cracking his knuckles. "Let's see if you're as tough as you look," he slurred, taking another step forward. The crowd held its breath. They knew things were about to get interesting. Travis took another unsteady step forward, his boots scuffing against the stone pathway. His whiskey-fueled bravado swelled as he squared his shoulders, tilting his head in mock curiosity. The guards still hadn't flinched, and that annoyed him. "Man, they really train you to be statues, huh?" Travis snickered, waving his hand inches from Daniel's face. His fingers, greasy from bar snacks, left faint smudges in the air. "Come on, soldier boy, give me a blink, a twitch, hell, I'd take a sneeze." Silence. Daniel Matthews remained locked in position, his rifle held in ceremonial precision. His breathing was steady, his muscles relaxed yet ready. Years in the Marines had trained him to anticipate threats, to read the smallest signs of escalation. And Travis? Travis was a drunk man looking for trouble he couldn't handle. The small crowd that had gathered shifted uncomfortably. A couple of tourists exchanged worried glances. An older man in a Vietnam veteran's cap clenched his jaw, his hands forming tight fists. He had seen men like Travis before, loud, reckless, and bound to regret their next move. But Travis wasn't paying attention to the crowd. He was focused on breaking the guard's composure. "You know what your problem is?" Travis slurred, stepping even closer. His breath, a rancid mix of beer and whiskey, hung heavy in the air. "You think you're better than regular folks. Standing here all high and mighty in your little fancy outfit." He prodded at one of the brass buttons on Daniel's tunic. The small metallic ping echoed in the quiet courtyard. "Bet this thing costs more than my truck," he muttered. "Ain't that something?" Still, no reaction. The tension thickened. The tourists held their breath, some discreetly pulling out their phones. Even the palace security cameras tilted slightly, recording the unfolding scene. Travis smirked. "All right, tough guy. You don't want to move? Let's see if you can stand your ground when things get real." Then, in a move so blatantly disrespectful it sent a shockwave through the watching crowd, Travis took his half-empty beer can and tipped it forward, spilling a golden stream onto the polished leather of Daniel's boots. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The cold beer seeped into the fine black leather, glistening in the fading light. The Vietnam vet took a step forward, his face dark with anger. A woman covered her mouth. A young child, still holding his father's hand, whispered, "Mommy, why is he being so mean?" Travis grinned, stepping back like a man who had just won a bet. Well, he drawled, taking a sloppy bow. "I do believe that means I win." The crowd waited, their eyes darting between the disrespectful drunk and the unshaken, unreadable guard. Daniel Matthews had endured insults before. He had been shoved, yelled at, tested. But this was a whole different level. And what happened next would leave everyone speechless. Travis let out a laugh, staggering backward as if he had just won some grand contest. His beer-soaked grin stretched across his face while he turned to the crowd, arms wide as if expecting applause. "Y'all see that?" he boasted, his voice thick with liquor and misplaced confidence. "He just let me do it. Didn't even blink. Ain't that right, tough guy?" Daniel Matthews stood still, but his grip on the rifle tightened ever so slightly. His training had conditioned him for moments like this, to remain composed, to ignore provocation. But his instincts, honed through years of military service, recognized the shift in energy. This wasn't just a drunken tourist pushing his luck anymore. This was an escalating threat. The crowd felt it too. The tension was no longer just uncomfortable, it was suffocating. Even the security cameras, their lenses unblinking, seemed to focus harder, capturing every single detail of what was unfolding. The Vietnam veteran, standing near the edge of the crowd, muttered under his breath. He's gonna regret this. His wife touched his arm, a silent reminder to stay back. But Travis? He was still riding high on his moment of defiance. You know, I was expecting more of a reaction, he mused, stepping in again. His whiskey-laced breath hit Daniel's stoic face. Guess you're just another pretty face in a uniform, huh? Still nothing. That made Travis angry. All right, he spat, his bloodshot eyes narrowing. Let's see if you can ignore this. With one sudden, reckless motion, he grabbed at Daniel's rifle, his fingers grazing the polished wood. The moment froze. The crowd gasped, their collective breath held hostage. Even Travis, in his alcohol-clouded mind, realized too late that he had crossed a line he should never have crossed. Daniel moved before anyone saw it coming. His stance shifted with surgical precision, his boot planting firmly on the stone beneath him. His grip on the rifle turned rock solid as he pivoted with the fluidity of a man who had trained for combat situations his entire career. And with one single, devastating movement, he acted. It wasn't aggression. It wasn't anger. It was discipline. And in the next heartbeat, Travis would learn exactly what that meant. The moment Travis's fingers brushed against the guard's rifle, time seemed to collapse in on itself. Daniel Matthews exploded into motion. It was a single, fluid movement, so fast, so precise that most onlookers wouldn't have believed it if they hadn't seen it with their own eyes. Before Travis even knew what was happening, his wrist was locked in an iron grip. Not a strike. Not an attack. Just a single, controlled movement that spoke of years of disciplined training. Travis's entire body followed the motion, his weight thrown off balance in an instant. His knees buckled, his feet skidded against the stone, and before he could even think to resist, he was on the ground. Flat on his back. Completely stunned. The impact sent a shockwave through the crowd. The tourists who had been watching in uneasy anticipation now stood frozen, their faces shifting from amusement to pure disbelief. Even the Vietnam veteran gave a slow nod of approval, his arms crossed over his chest. Travis, however, wasn't nodding. He was gasping. What the hell, he sputtered, his beer-drenched confidence shattered in an instant. Daniel Matthews had already returned to his original stance. Boots planted. Rifle steady. Expression unreadable. To anyone who hadn't just witnessed the sheer precision of what had just happened, it looked like he had never moved at all. But Travis knew better. He felt it. His wrist throbbed from the sudden maneuver, his back ached from the impact against the unforgiving stone, and his pride? It was in ruins. The crowd finally broke their silence, whispers, murmurs, gasps. A few even applauded, not in mockery, but in genuine admiration. "You okay, bud?" one man in a baseball cap called out, barely suppressing a grin. Travis didn't respond. He was still trying to process what had just happened. The worst part? Matthews wasn't even looking at him anymore. He had already dismissed him. Like he was nothing. and that realization stung more than any punch ever could. Travis lay on the cold stone, blinking up at the sky, his mind still struggling to process what had just happened. 1 second, he was taunting the guard, convinced he was untouchable. The next, flat on his back, staring up at Buckingham Palace like a fool. The crowd was buzzing now. Some were whispering in hushed tones, others outright chuckling. A few had even caught the whole thing on their phones. But the worst part? The guard wasn't even looking at him anymore. Daniel Matthews had returned to his perfect stance, feet planted, rifle steady. It was as if Travis didn't even exist. That was what hurt the most. Not the fall. Not the stinging in his wrist. But the fact that he had just been effortlessly put in his place, and then immediately forgotten. Travis gritted his teeth, embarrassment burning hotter than any drink he'd had that night. He pushed himself up, hands shaking, his pride screaming for retaliation. But before he could do something stupid, a voice cut through the air like a knife. That's enough. It wasn't the guard. It was the Vietnam veteran. He had stepped forward, his stance solid, unwavering, his arms crossed over his chest. There was something in his eyes, something that commanded respect, even from someone as reckless as Travis. "Son," the veteran said, his voice low, firm, and undeniably serious. "You don't even realize how lucky you are right now." Travis froze, his breath catching in his throat. "Lucky," he scoffed, trying to mask his shaking confidence. "That guy just..." The veteran cut him off with a single shake of his head. "You don't get it, do you?" he said, stepping closer. "That man," he pointed at Matthews, still standing at attention, "he could have ended you in less than a second. And trust me, kid, he's seen worse than you." Travis swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. The veteran's gaze bore into him. "You think that was embarrassing? That was mercy." For the first time that night, Travis had nothing to say. The realization hit him like a freight train. Matthews wasn't just some ceremonial statue. He was a soldier. And Travis had just made the worst mistake of his life underestimating him. Silence hung in the air for a long moment. Then, with a final shake of his head, the veteran turned away, muttering, "Damn kids these days." The lesson had been taught. And Travis? He wouldn't forget it anytime soon. What do you think? This wasn't just about a drunk tourist making a fool of himself. It was about discipline, respect, and the power of restraint. What would you have done in the guard's position? Should he have held back even longer, or was his response exactly what was needed? Do you think traditions like this should be protected, or do some people take them for granted? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective. And don't forget, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this.